Hey there, folks, and welcome out to the Single Player Podcast. I'm your one and only host, I'm 16-Bit, and I got a good show for this week because we're going to be talking about Japan's retro game Taskforce, Sony and Nintendo's acquisitions, and Bayonetta 3's launch date, plus more. So sit back, relax, enjoy the show, and I'll be with you in a bit. Alright folks, and we're back, and now it's time for my favorite segment, your favorite segment, everyone in the world's favorite segment. It's time for the Gaming Forecast. So let's see what's coming up between the week of July 24th to the 30th. Okay, on July 26th, you have 3 games coming out. Hellpoint for Xbox Series X, Noel the Mortal Fate for Xbox One, and Story of Seasons Pioneers of Olivetown making its Western debut on PlayStation 4. Then on the 27th, you have just one game coming out, Octopath Traveler Champions of the Continent making its Western debut on iOS and Android. Then on the 28th, you have a whopping 14 games all coming out on the same day. First up, you have Anonymous Code exclusively releasing in Japan on Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 4. Azure Striker Gunvolt 3 for Nintendo Switch, Bear and Breakfast for Windows and Nintendo Switch, Captain Velvet Meteor The Jump Plus Dimensions for Nintendo Switch, Digimon Survive Grim Grimoire Once More, and Haji Love Making Lovers, all exclusively in Japan for Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 4. Then you have Himemiya-san wa Kamatai exclusively in Japan on PlayStation 4. Kumaju Ramilia Scarlet Symphony for Windows and Nintendo Switch, Lost Epic for Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4 and 5, Relief Dear You for Switch, and Senno Hato Gumisome no Kuiki, both exclusively in Japan for Nintendo Switch. Vistaria Saga 2, The Sacred Sword of Sylvanister, making its Western debut on Windows, and Uoni for Nintendo Switch. Then on the 29th, you have 5 games all coming out. You have Digimon Survive making its Western debut on Windows, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. Madison for Nintendo Switch. RimWorld Console Edition for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Story of Seasons Pioneers of Olivetown making its European and Oceania debut on the PlayStation 4. And finally, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 for Nintendo Switch. And that was your gaming forecast. My God. Some interesting stuff there. I'm totally excited for Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I have the special edition pre-ordered and everything, so I'm totally looking forward to that. I never play the second game though. I only played the first one, and that was it. So I would like to go back and actually play the sequel if you can actually find a physical copy of it, because I don't know why. For some reason, Nintendo stopped making copies of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. You can only buy it digitally. So anyway, with that being said, let's move on to our first story. Okay, and so for our first story, last week I talked a bit about the Ken Akumatsu winning his seat in the upper house of Japan's national diet, and how I had a lot of hope for him because he supports freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and overall, I really like his platform. Well, within his first week in office, he's already done something pretty friggin' awesome, and it's something I'm just like, bro, this is what we need. He has announced the creation of a task force to investigate and preserve classic video games in a legal way. Yeah, I'm not making this up. He said on Twitter, a select team of experts has been formed to start working on legal preservation of past games in a playable state. The archiving and utilization of old content that is being lost in an area in which I have strong passion. I want to make this a success. Ladies and gentlemen, what we have here is a level of based the likes of which we have never seen in our lifetime. This is absolutely incredible, and this is what I like to see. This is what I have been calling for a while. We need more preservation of video games, because unfortunately a lot of classic games are not being properly preserved, as we've seen with Silent Hill, as we saw with the development of the Kingdom Hearts HD remasters. A lot of games are not being properly preserved, and we're losing them. So the fact that he has gone forward and created a task force to preserve classic video games, my God, I am just like, I'm in love with this. Absolutely in love with this. This is what we need. In fact, we you know, it's funny because I actually found out a few, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, we actually have something similar to that in the U.S. Congress. There is a congressional caucus on video games and esports. Unfortunately, it's run by a bunch of boomers who don't know absolute jack shit about video games. So you would think that they would try to do something like this, but unfortunately, no. In fact, for many years, I've always felt that the Library of Congress should establish a national game registry, very similar to what they do with film, where, you know, they select games that are important to the history of video games in the United States and try to preserve them as much as humanly possible. And the fact that we don't have something like that, it's sad. It's absolutely sad. And the fact that Ken Akumatsu has gone ahead and done it within his first week in office, I love it. I absolutely love it. The dude is amazing, and I can't wait to see what else he's going to do here. My hope is that we're going to see other stuff where he's preserving maybe classic anime and manga in a legal manner. In fact, before he even ran for office, he actually started a website that digitized and made available manga that was long out of print, including his own manga. So he's clearly been very much a supporter of preservation of manga and video games. And the fact that he's bringing it onto a national level, I think is incredible. And I think it's definitely something that we should be following. It's an example that should be followed. So Ken Akumatsu, my God, God bless you, dude. You are just an absolute incredible man. Anyway, let's move on to our next story. Okay, and for our next story, we have an update on the Genesis Mini 2 because it has officially been confirmed for North America. That is right, ladies and gentlemen, and it's coming out on October 27th of this year. On top of that, they also announced more games for the North American Mini 2, which now includes Sonic 3D Blast, Rainbow Islands Extra, Outrunners, Super Hang-On, Vector Man 2, The Ooze, and Rolling Thunder 2. Now, as all of this was happening, more games were announced for the Japanese Mini 2. Now, keep in mind that, of course, the libraries are not going to be entirely the same. But they've announced Aha Harimanda, which I don't know what that is, Alien Soldier, which has been confirmed for North America, Fatal Fury 2, which has not been confirmed. This next one that I have no idea what it is, it's like Guanabera, I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's Mahjong, I'm not sure. But it's a really long name. Spatter, Super Street Fighter 2, The New Challengers, awesome. And Tatsujin, which is probably more well-known in the US as Truxton. Yes, this thing is going to have Truxton in it. Awesome. Actually, you know what? I'm actually glad to see more of the Toplin games getting re-releases. Between that and Zero Wing being added to the Genesis, the Switch Online expansion, That's awesome. I think that's great because Truxton's a great game. But they also announced 4 more Sega CD games coming to it. And let me tell you, there's some good shit here. First and foremost, Final Fight CD. Oh yeah, Final Fight CD is coming to this thing. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have not played Final Fight CD, it is quite possibly one of the best, probably the best, home port of Final Fight ever made. Yeah, I would say it's even better than even the later home ports because it is just incredible. Graphically, it looks amazing. It has a fantastic soundtrack, and best of all, it has Guy. I know a lot of people, for some reason, like they hold the Super Nintendo version on like the high pedestal and such and go on how great it is. And look, the Super Nintendo version is fine, but it's a very toned down port. Okay, like I said, they needed to create an entirely special version just to include Guy. All right, but with the Sega CD version, nope. All 3 characters are playable. It has all the stages. It has, I think, CD quality audio, and I think a whole new soundtrack. But it's the fact that this includes it, hell yeah. But then, as if that wasn't enough, they also announced Lunar, the Silver Star, and Lunar 2 Eternal Blue. That, to me, just makes it even more worth it. Not just one Lunar game, but both of them. I've only played a little bit of Silver Star, but Eternal Blue I played through, because I have it on the PlayStation. I have Lunar 2 Eternal Blue complete. And when I say complete, I mean, I have everything in it. Even the pendant, which I think has never been opened, because it's still wrapped in paper. So, if you've never played those games, they're absolutely fantastic RPGs. Excellent RPGs, especially Lunar 2. Lunar 2 is just fantastic, especially on the PlayStation. It's a shame that the Sega CD versions are great, but they're a little limited because of the technology, whereas the PlayStation and Saturn versions are fantastic. We're talking fully animated cutscenes and everything. It's a great version of those games. But the fact that this is including both of them, yeah, dude, sign me the hell up for this. And then on top of that, they announced the Wonder Mega Collection, which, if you don't know what the Wonder Mega was, okay, I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with the JVC XI. The Wonder Mega, which is basically a Genesis and Sega CD all-in-one system that was created by JVC. The Wonder Mega is the Japanese name for it, so it's the same thing. But this includes the Wonder Mega Collection, which, according to this, is just a series, a compilation of games that was released as a pack-in for the Wonder Mega. So that's actually pretty neat that they're kind of celebrating the Wonder Mega and putting it in with that. Now, of course, this is just the Japanese version, so I'm assuming that most of these games are not going to be in there. My hope, however, is that the big ones, Truxton, Fatal Fury, Super Street Fighter 2, Final Fight, Lunar, I hope those stay. And I'm pretty sure they're going to stay in the North American version, because if they include it, then that to me is just a huge deal. Now, granted, keep in mind that there are still more games to be announced for this thing. And I think there's now like 30 somewhat games that have been announced. You've got like 20 more, and my hope is that you're going to have some pretty heavy hitters. I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that one of them is Snatcher. Please, for the love of God, let it be Snatcher. Because that's a game that very few people have ever been able to play legally. And it's one of those it's a Hideo Kojima game. So, you're going to get something that's at least pretty good. Or at least it's Hideo Kojima before they basically let him off the leash and just let him do whatever the hell he wanted. But that's just my opinion. You don't have to agree with me on that. But anyway, I'm totally looking forward to this. I'm just, like I said, praying and hoping we get Snatcher. But overall, the lineup for this thing is looking incredible. Anyway, guys, I'm going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after this.
ソニック君とこれまたテイルス君ですもの。これはまたまた16ビットのメガドライブ。あらら、なんとこれはびっくりびっくり。高性能でコンパクト、6つのボタンのファイティングパッドもついて、しかもソフトタイトル250オーバーの実力ときたら登場メガドライブ2。新世代のミラクルマシンメガ CD2 も同時発売。これは買いですよ。セガ
Wishing on a dream that seems far off, hoping it will come today. Into the starlit night, foolish dreamers turn the gates, waiting on a shooting star. But what if that star is not to come? Will our dreams fade to nothing until the horizon darkens most? We all need to believe there is hope. Is an angel watching closely over me? And can there be a guiding light I've yet to see? I know my heart will guide me, but there's a hole within my soul. What will fill this emptiness inside of me? And am I to be satisfied without knowing? I wish that for a chance to see. Now all I need is my star to come.
Alright folks, we're back, and first up on our next round of stories, we have a couple of updates on acquisitions. The first one up is, of course, the PlayStation acquisition of Bungie, which apparently is finished. That's right, folks, it is complete. PlayStation now owns Bungie. Sony tweeted out, well, at least the official PlayStation Twitter account tweeted out, "The agreement to acquire Bungie has closed, so now we can officially say, welcome to the PlayStation family, Bungie." Well, at Bungie. And that's it. They now own them. And you know what? It's actually a bit weird because for years, Bungie was considered a Microsoft studio. I mean, they were owned by Microsoft at one point. So it's just kind of a weird 180 where, a studio you would never consider be owned by Sony is now owned by them. But anyway, it's interesting to see what's going to come out of this. Technically, this means that Sony now owns Destiny. It's a first-party IP. But I'm actually kind of hoping we get a return of a lot of classic Bungie IPs that we haven't heard from in a while. Obviously, Halo is not one of them, but they do now own Marathon and Myth. And we haven't heard from those games in over 20 years. So I'm kind of hoping they'll actually kind of dig into the Bungie's IPs and actually give us some new entries in them. Marathon was actually pretty good. It was a pretty good series of shooters. And Myth is not bad. It's actually a pretty good RTS. But the other acquisition I want to talk about is recently from Nintendo, who has announced that they've acquired Dynamo Pictures, a company known for doing CG movies. But here's the thing. From now on, they're going to be renamed Nintendo Pictures. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Nintendo now owns their own animation studio. Now, we don't know exactly what Nintendo's going to be using the studio for, whether or not they're actually going to be making CG animation for their games, or if they're actually going to be putting out animated movies based off Nintendo IPs. My guess is probably the latter, because that means Nintendo has stricter control over the said movies. You see, that's the thing with Nintendo. They're ever since the Mario Brothers movie from 1993, they have been very, very strict about movie adaptations of their IPs. And I don't blame them, because that entire movie was a disaster behind the scenes. I mean, you had that was made by I think it was a Hollywood Pictures, which was a division of Disney. And Disney wanted it to be a direct adaptation of the games, but it had a husband and wife writing and directing team I think they did directing, I'm not really sure. But they wanted a more darker, more adult comedy. And so the two clashed a lot. The actors had no idea what the hell they were doing. And I remember John Leguizamo said something along the lines of they were basically drunk through most of the production. And that Bob Hoskins has no memory of actually making the movie. So you could see why Nintendo has not really been too keen on adapting their works for film until, what was it, Pokemon Detective Pikachu. And that was, of course, heavily monitored by Nintendo. You have the Mario movie, which was also been heavily monitored by Nintendo. Hell, Miyamoto is executive producer of it, and you know he's heavily involved with that. So my guess that this is basically their way of doing it so they can actually produce their own movies and TV shows without having to deal with Hollywood. And in my opinion, that's the best way to go, because we've actually seen that what happens when game companies do that. For example, look at Capcom. They've made some pretty good CG Resident Evil movies compared to whatever the hell Hollywood makes, which is mostly just shitty fan fiction. In fact, it actually turns out that Nintendo has worked with this company before on the Pikmin shorts that came out a couple of years ago. So I do expect some pretty good stuff out of this. They have a pretty good track record, and it seems they've also worked on other games in anime as well, including Death Stranding, Ghost in the Shell, Nier Replicant, Persona 5, Monster Hunter World. So they have a pretty good track record. So totally looking forward to see what's going to come out of this, and let's move on to our next story. Okay, and next up, we have an update on the Bandai Namco ransomware attack. As it appears, they've officially confirmed the attack has happened and has released a statement about it. They said, and I quote, "After we confirm the unauthorized access, we have taken measures such as blocking access to the servers to prevent the damage from spreading. In addition, there is a possibility that customer information related to the toys and hobby business in Asian regions, excluding Japan, was included in the servers and PCs, and we are currently identifying the status about existence of leakage, scope of the damage, and investigating the cause. We will continue to investigate the cause of this incident and will disclose the investigation results as appropriate. We will also work with external organizations to strengthen security throughout the group and take measures to prevent recurrence. We offer our sincerest apologies to everyone involved for any complications or concerns caused by this incident." And you know what? I'm glad that they finally put out a statement about it, but also kind of gave us an idea as to what was possibly breached. And it does seem that it has nothing to do with, most of it possibly has nothing to do with gaming, but rather their, as I said, toys and hobby business. You know, the Gunpla and such. So I'm glad they finally came out about it. It's good that they're taking extra steps and measures to prevent something like this from happening again. I'll say this, they did a better job than when Sony did when that hack happened. So, yeah, just like I said before, if you've bought any sort of any toys or hobby stuff or any models from Bandai Namco within the last few months, I would highly recommend you pay attention to your bank accounts, make sure that there is no suspicious information, and please make sure that everything is fine, because you never know what these bastards got their hands on. So anyway, let's move on to our next story. And next up, we have an update on the Lolipop Chainsaw remake. Man, we've got a lot of updates to go over. But anyway, as you guys know, last week they announced that it would be getting a remake, and many people, including myself, had some concerns that it would be censored and toned down than the original game. Well, the producer of the game, Yoshimi Yasuda, put out a statement addressing these concerns. Now, the letter he posted on Twitter is pretty long, but there are some aspects of it I do want to go over. First off, he said, "We have taken notice that there has been speculation that the remake will change the story. We believe that Lollipop Chainsaw's story is a huge part of what fans love about the original game, and we, the development staff, feel the same. As such, the story will not be changed in the remake. Additionally, we do not intend to change the aesthetics of the game. The mention of how the game will have a more realistic look in the previous announcement was meant to refer to how we will make use of the advanced rendering technology available in current game consoles. We do not wish to change Juliet's design, and the assumption that we want to is baseless. We were the ones who created Juliet's model data from great trial and error 10 years ago and feel attached to her more than anyone else." Finally, we learned after the announcement of Lollipop Chainsaw Remake that many fans were worried about censorship in the game. We have not yet discussed the issue with the platform holders yet, and thus cannot say anything about the topic, but what we can say is that we intend to negotiate with the platform holders to make it so that the game can be as close to the original version as possible. Now, it's good to hear that they're planning to keep it as close to the original as possible, and they're not going to try to change a lot. But what I do have a problem with this is his claim that these are baseless assumptions. Look, we have seen countless times where games get a remake or a reboot or re-release or whatever, and it's completely toned down and censored from the original. Case in point, look at Resident Evil 4. The VR version that came out recently had a lot of dialogue cut out because it was considered inappropriate. So yeah, it is something that people are worried about, and they have every right to be worried about. So I don't think it's unfounded. I'm glad to see that they are trying to keep it as close to the original, but don't just dismiss people's worries because you think that they're unfounded. They're not unfounded. It does happen in the industry. Anyway, I'm going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after this.
She's brutal. She's merciless. She's deadly. When the zombie apocalypse begins,
I'm gonna eat you up!
show no mercy.
Ooh, that's gotta hurt.
Lollipop Chainsaw. Rated M for mature.
Alright folks, and we're back, and first up on our last round of stories, we have an update on Bayonetta 3. That's right, they officially put out a trailer announcing the launch date, which is confirmed for October 28th of this year. And it's about damn time, because it's been like, what, 5 years since they first announced Bayonetta 3? My god, it's taken them a while. I mean, I don't even think Bayonetta 2 had that long of a development cycle. Of course, the trailer itself wasn't just a release date, it also had some more story elements of it, new characters and such. So overall, the game looks incredible. And what's also really cool is they announced that it's going to get a special edition called the Trinity Masquerade Edition. And this thing will include 3 reversible game cover art and a 200-page color art book. So definitely something to look into if you can actually get your hands on it. I haven't seen any pre-orders for it yet, but I would like to put in for that. They also announced, and this was funny. Oh yeah, by the way, before I get into any more, also the original Bayonetta is going to get a standalone physical release on September 30th for a limited run. So if you want to get that, I'd recommend it. I don't think I need it because I already have Bayonetta 1 and 2. Well, I have Bayonetta 1 for the PS3, unfortunately, and the Wii U. And I have Bayonetta 2 for the Wii U. So I'm like, I don't think I really need Bayonetta 2 and Bayonetta 1 on the Switch. But they also announced that the game will be getting a special mode called Naive Angel Mode. And so what this does is, as you guys know in Bayonetta, whenever she like summons a demon or whatever, her hair, because her entire suit is made from her hair, and her hair is used to summon the demons, so parts of her suit kind of go away and she gets like, she shows more and more skin. It's been like that since the first game. Well, they've decided to include this new mode that just keeps her clothes on. It doesn't reveal any clothes or anything like that. Now, thankfully, this whole thing is optional, so you can play it like a normal human being, and that is perfectly fine. I'd hate it if they made this permanent. But what I find funny is the reason why they did this. You see, over the past several years, there have been people complaining about Bayonetta games, mostly the difficulty and the sexual aspects of them. You always find it amongst game journalists where they whine about how difficult and how sexual it is, and oh my god, I can't play this in front of my family because it's awkward and all this kind of stuff, which, by the way, why the fuck are you playing a rated M game in front of your family? That always got me. They're like, oh my god, I can't play this around my kids. I don't know, then maybe wait until your kids are asleep to actually play it. You know, my parents did not watch rated R movies in front of me and my sister, okay? They basically waited until we went to bed to watch anything like that. So why these people are doing that in front of their kids, I have no idea. It's completely baffling to me. But what I find hilarious is the fact that not only did they include this mode, but they're mocking them by calling it Naive Angel Mode. Of course, personally, I'm torn between calling it cuck or soy mode, because that's really what it is. Anyway, I'm going to see if I can get that special edition, but if I can't, I'll just pre-order the regular, because I can't wait to get my hands on this game, because it's going to be friggin' amazing. So let's move on to our next story. Okay, this next one I thought was really cool. So last year, the Pokemon Company started doing a collaboration with various museums around Japan for what they're calling the Pokemon Fossil Museum. Essentially, it's an exhibition that shows models of Pokemon fossils right next to the actual fossils that the Pokemon is based on. And last year, it started in Hokkaido, and then moved to Shimane, and then Tokyo, and is now currently in Toyohashi until November. Well, they've decided to further the collaboration by creating a virtual museum experience. That's right, you can now virtually, without visiting Japan, can actually go and see this entire exhibit yourself. Now, granted, the entire thing is in Japanese, so if you want to read anything, you're not really going to be able to, but there is a lot of infographics, so you can really get the idea of what they're going for. But overall, the entire thing is awesome, because like I said, they have like these models of Pokemon fossils. They look incredible. Of course, they also have models of the actual Pokemon themselves. But they're actually right next to the fossils that they're based on. So it's a really cool thing where you can kind of compare and contrast the two. And if you're interested, I highly recommend you go check it out. It's really, really cool. And of course, it's there to promote the upcoming Pokemon Violet and Scarlet. I did sort of a quick look through of it, and it's quite incredible. Kind of wish I had been there in person, but seeing it virtually is also pretty cool as well. In case you're wondering how it works, it's very similar to Google Maps Street View, because you basically have a 360 panoramic view of the entire exhibition, and then you just click forward, because there's these various circles on the ground that you click, and that'll move you forward into the exhibition. So you can actually stop and look at things and such, get a little closer view. You can use the mouse scroll to zoom in and out. Overall, the experience is impressive, and I kind of wish more museums did stuff like this, because personally, like, there's a lot of museums I would love to visit. I'm very much a museum kind of guy. And unfortunately, I don't really have the time to really do that sort of stuff. So I kind of wish more museums would do stuff like this. If you're interested, I've left a link in the description. You just have to click that and it'll load you right into it. Anyway, let's move on to our next story. And for our last story, we have an update on the Ubisoft game shutdown situation. Man, we've got a lot of updates this week. But specifically regarding Assassin's Creed Liberation HD. Now, I've talked about this situation before, but it seems a lot of attention has been put on Liberation HD, because apparently, if you go to Steam, not only does it say, it has two notices, that not only does it say that it will no longer available for sale on Steam, but that it will not be accessible following September 1st, meaning even if you own and have the game downloaded on your computer, you still will not be able to play it. And of course, this has caused an outrage, and rightfully so, from gamers who are basically saying, excuse me, I just paid $20 for this game, and now suddenly you're telling me that it's going to be inaccessible? That even though it's downloaded and playable on my computer, I will be basically locked out from playing it? What the fuck? And well, we have an update on that. Ubisoft actually, because IGN put out an story about it, Ubisoft sent them a statement regarding it, basically saying that owners will still be able to access, play, or re-download the game. You just won't be able to download the or purchase any more DLC. And in fact, if you go to the Steam page, it has been completely updated, and it says, and I quote, DLC for this product and online elements and features will become unavailable as of September 1st, 2022. The base game will continue to be playable. You know what? I'll say this. I don't like that Ubisoft is shutting down services for these games. I understand why they're doing it, because unfortunately server costs does keep going up and up. As you make newer games, you eventually have to shut down the service for the older games. But at the same time, the idea that you can download a game, have it completely installed and playable, and then suddenly, after one day, the company just decides to lock you out of it because, oh, well, the online services are shut down. That to me is just, it's scary. It's absolutely scary, and it's something that gamers should be outspoken about and should be calling these companies out for it. Now, granted, Ubisoft did capitulate, and they did say, okay, no, the game will be accessible, will be playable. That's fine, okay? But you know what? This is what gamers should be doing from now on. Whenever a company start pulling this bullshit and start basically saying, oh, by the way, you won't be able to access the game you paid for after a certain date, call them out on it. Be on their ass about it, and eventually, hopefully, they will capitulate and they will basically change their opinion. This is why I do not support cloud gaming in the slightest. I know that a lot of publishers are pushing us towards it and they want us to have cloud gaming, but I refuse to even try it, because honestly, if I'm going to purchase a game, especially one digitally, I would rather have it saved locally on my computer or my game consoles or whatever, than have it on a server so that eventually one day that game that I spent, $60, $30 on I'm locked out of. Because, oh well, the service decided to shut you out of it. It's total bullshit, folks. And this is why, until the day I die, until they basically put me 6 feet under the ground, I will look unto the heavens and I will scream to everyone that you should all fear an all-digital future. That's why. Anyway, folks, I'm going to take a short break and we'll be right back after this.
Which Pokemon has bumpers and flippers? All of them. Introducing Pokemon Pinball, now with its own Rumble feature for Game Boy Color. The new way to catch 'em all.
All right, folks, and that's it for this week. I want to thank you all for listening, and I'll see you next week. And remember to keep gaming.